It's in progress.
All right, fantastic. Call to order. The City of Olivet Economic Development Commission. Meeting for July 24th, 2003.
No. No, she's online, but she does not. No.
Trail, would you call roll?
Yes. Commissioner Moons,
Here.
Commissioner Szynski,
Here.
Commissioner Jacobs.
Here.
Commissioner Patrick.
Here.
All right, and I'll let the minutes reflect that the city council liaison, councilperson Carl is in attendance via Zoom. And then I myself, Carlos Stroh, the Director of Planning and Community Development, along with the senior planner, Don Doty, who is on via Zoom. And then I'd like to introduce our new planning and zoning administrator, Jack Carswell, a KSU grad, joining our team in there. So we're all set.
Fantastic, okay. Welcome, sir. And of course, we start out with public comments. I do not see many people at all in attendance, but are there any people online that would have their say?
There are no attendees online at this time, Chairman.
Unfortunate, but it makes it easy. Right, Carlos, do you have anything for the comprehensive plan update?
Yes, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to schedule the meeting, kind of go over some of the information we received from the advisory committee and from the consultants. A real quick just snapshot, because they did a market analysis and then some of the survey community input results. A real quick summary on those. So if first I'll hit on the market analysis highlights. Chairman, you saw these at the advisory committee meeting, but they did a market analysis that looked at population, housing, income, jobs, spending potential, and what type of retail gaps were available for the community. First, it will go into population, and based on projected census results, overall, there's going to be a slow growth rate throughout the nation, and we expect it here in Missouri, and then given St. Louis and the region kind of being somewhat stagnant, we expect population growth to be very minimal for the next 40 years, which is just the generally outlook of that plan in there. But they did look at what was going on within the 2020 decennial census, and we saw in terms of our surrounding communities, all of that did well, over 9% growth. Creve Coeur had over 14%, with Ladue almost at 4%, which is impressive because the St. Louis County within itself lost population in there. So this movement is vital, especially if the county in itself isn't growing. But you see some of our other neighbors, like University City, losing more than 6%, Overland more than 5%. So a strong mid-county area. Based on the decennial results from 2010 to 2020, they looked into that population, and when you look at the school age cohort from 5 to 19-year-olds, all of that was the only community that gained population. That was 16%. And it's important because we're hearing a lot of this, all these apartments, and they're going to overflood the schools and all that. Well, the apartments haven't even started here. They started in Creve Coeur, and there's the result of population growth, but they're not overcrowding, whether it's Parkway or Ladue. Now there's multiple school districts in there, but what we've seen is that the average household size in all of it has increased in there, and we have strong single family redevelopment or remodeling occurring in there. So we're having bigger families, yes, but you can't solely attribute it to the increase in apartments and that. And I'll get into a little bit more of the data as we go through here. In terms of rental versus ownership, 73% of the housing units in Olivet are owner occupied, with 27% being rental, and that can range from apartments to a single family house that's being leased. And you can see outside of Ladue, we have the lowest percentage of rental housing or housing units in this area that they're and below the county in there. So there's a really good mix and a really strong home ownership component in our community.
Carlos, give a sense, how many houses are there in Olivet? How many apartments are there?
I'll get, and that's a good question. I'll get that in just a second when I have the actual numbers. Overall housing units, apartments, single family houses, attached houses, there are 3,300 housing units in the city. I'll break those up for you in just a second as I go through here instead of jumping over. So, and in terms of when you look at the units, and here, this might answer a component, a portion of your question. There are 3,300 units in all of that. 2,500 of those are single family detached homes. And then here I broke down how many units that percentage would composite. So when you looked at the 1 unit attached, that's 96 units, 2 units, there's about 40 of those, 3 to 4 units, 142 of those units. So here, when you look at that mid housing type, not too dense, we're pretty robust here. But when you look at these larger multifamily, 20 or more units in a structure, we're pretty low. You know, there's only 50 units. And I think trying to figure out where those would be. Bonham Village has like these 8 plexes in there, but their roof lines are kind of all there's like 4 of them where the roof lines are all configured together in there. And then Apple Tree has a complex where there are about four unit buildings that share a common roof line, and like they're attached at the corners. It's not like one continuous building. And I'm assuming that that's where those counts come from.
What is a 1 unit attached?
That's a very good question. I think that is going to be more like a duplex.
Would that be 2 units?
That would be when they're side to side is going to be the way I would define it. So
I think it's a townhouse.
yeah.
Oh, right, like, like down
Yeah,
there. Mhm.
Castle.
Got it,
Mhm.
got it. That's probably right.
Okay, and that makes good sense because there's 96 of those as opposed to the 2 units. So good question. That's a good question because that's been coming up. So we did take a look into that. So we did an analysis, and these are existing apartment complexes in the city of Olivet. And you can see that there are 44 total, with Bonham Village Apartments with 206 units being the largest. And then 9211 Olive, which is that office building where Custom Foam is at. There's actually 5 units on the 2nd floor.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't know there were that many.
1902 building, and it was mixed use.
I did not, I had no idea. It's 1928.
1928, I'm sorry. We had
That's
a,
interesting.
yeah,
Sure, occupied?
yes. Mhm.
So where's Wellesley Acres?
Wellesley Acres is on Del Mar, right off of
At
No.
La Paire?
no, not La Paire, but they're on Del Mar Boulevard, and I can't think of it, Dunbarton.
Uh-huh.
Those
Those are-
those 4 units on the Dunbarton side are Olivet's. And then, you know, there are these 8, I think they're 4 unit buildings. We
I
got,
don't think I even know- I-
you went, yeah. That took some finding. I think we have 5 of those, and they're kind of mimic like the ones that got torn down, I think, on the other side.
Oh, got it,
Yeah,
got it.
so now going back to Nate's question here. So we have approved a total of 539 new apartment units with the Oliver with 151, Olive Crossing 181, and the Olive Apartments, which is where the old Irvington Rhyme is, behind Chevy's, having 207. So they'll be,
207 units being built behind Chevy?
yes. Mhm.
Well, what are there, said about 30?
So there'll be 539, you know, apartment units that will be coming into the mix in there. And then in that unit category, you know, we're trying to break up there. They have the efficiencies, the 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and then a limited amount of 3 in there.
In the Olive Apartments?
And all of the 3
All
developments
3
that
of
are,
those, okay.
they're primarily efficiencies and single units.
Got it.
Okay, so that once you add what's existing, what's total, we'll have 983 apartment units. You know, one of the things I want to note is I'm sure that there was a lot of the same sentiment in the 1960s when a majority of the apartment complexes were built in Olivet. The last apartment complex in Olivet was in 1986, and that was Bonham Village. Now we have other type of multifamily units. There are 4 condominium complexes that add 218 units. That's Warson Green off of Warson, Paramount Condominiums, Tower Hill, and Apple Tree.
Where's Castle Gates? That's probably your.
They're not condominiums.
Where's Paramount?
Paramount, let's see, is Indian Meadows and
Oh.
Olive, the one that's kind of tucked in right across the old Chieftain Manor, which is Olive Point. So across from the bowling alley,
Yeah.
there's a complex.
Apartments.
No, there are condos. There are apartments across the street from it on Indian Meadows.
Yeah.
Olive Point. And then there's Paramount and then Tower Hill, which has a bigger campus type of atmosphere.
Tower Hill, you can see it.
Yeah, you probably, there aren't too many people who would say Paramount, except that that's the ownership and that's what it's technically called. But it would be called probably Indian Trails Apartments or something
That's a
like
different complex you're
that.
talking about.
Different complex, but
No,
yeah.
you're thinking of Olive Point, which is the old Chieftain Manor.
Yeah.
Indian
Oh,
Trail-
am I? Okay, I'm so
Indian
sorry.
Trails is
I'm
just out here by the
very
Chieftain.
out of school, then I'm just gonna mute.
Then there's attached homes, which we have Castlegate Villas, Hilltop Manor, Upper Price Court, and then the new 34 units that are going to go in across the street. And there will be 126 attached homes. So I hope that kind of answers that question of how many units in there. So what I did now is like, I took all this information here and I added it in there. So you know, the 20 or more units, you know, the three new buildings that the Olive Crossing and the Olivet Apartments, you add those 539 and yes, it will go from 1.5% to 15.3% in there. And then all the other units are kind of reflected here. And in terms of going from the 77% detached single family, we'll go down to 66.2%. I could have gone back, I guess, and put a comparison with the other communities. I didn't do that, but
So our population growth over the past 20 years of 16% was not to apartments or anything like that, because there was nothing new put online at that time.
that is correct.
Was it housing stock or the size of household?
It's a combination of both. We have more units than we had before in terms of, you know, new construction, some subdivision, you know, these lot splits, they start to add up.
Okay.
In there, and then let's see, I'm trying to think, Hilltop came in later, like in 2010. I know Castlegate Villas was before 2000. You know, so half of those were probably already done and up and operating.
Right about that time.
Yeah.
So with the 500 units, 2 people apiece on average, 1,000 new
Residents, yeah.
residents. So that's another 12 to 15% growth.
Correct. And again, that would get us to our prime, which was back in 1960, where we were 9,400 something.
Wow.
That would have been my next question, to see where the trend was over time.
Yeah.
And I would think that there was a lot more. people.
Yeah,
Because
that's
the
our
school district divested themselves of a number of places like, well, Hilltop School, Dillman School, Central School, the community center.
Yeah.
Those were all.
our lowest population was in 2000. And then we had a small increase, and no, yeah, 2010 and 2020.
We're gonna need another fire.
That's not our department.
We don't have as many fires. Building codes are
That's
safer.
not this committee's problem.
So I'll continue on here. So again, we're probably looking at depending on looking at the sluggish growth of nationally, and then a stagnant, region here, 5% isn't out of the ordinary.
Okay.
All right. The other thing they looked at was income, and then we looked at the income disparity. And there, so if you live north of Olive, the typical medium household income is about $58,000. South of Olive, it's $136,000. We've been aware of that since 2010 because we did an analysis about that gap. And then that's what those little numbers show you right below. So again, north of Olive, they've seen the median household income has increased from 42.6 to 57.6. South of Olive, that median household income actually went down from 144.9 to 135.7. Now, they also did per capita income that gets real technical because then you're dividing by the number of people and all that. Another thing to understand is that you know, the way a lot of the census data is being taken now compared to 2010 to now 2020, it's hard to break down all of that because our zip code is 63132, and it extends all the way to Page, all the way to Lindbergh, and then to McKnight and a little bit further. And then our census tracts generally fall in there. So when you look at that per capita income or that medium household income, on the north side, it includes portions of Overland, it includes unincorporated, and then everything that's between, or, you know, north of the Plant Science Center. And there's a couple little housing units in there, I think. In there. So, you know, it does kind of, you know, it gets mixed into the collection of the analysis. Okay, and then one of the things they found is that a typical day we have over 7,800 employees coming in to Olivet to work and about 3,500 residents going out to work. So we're taking in more people to come work in Olivet than are leaving to go work in Olivet. So we have an employee inflow and it's important because we have some pretty big employers here: the Enterprise Fleet, US Bank, HDIS, Intelligrated, and there.
McCarthy still back there?
Murphy, is that who you're referring? Yeah, and Murphy and all that. So we have a strong business base here in there. So that helps as we look at, you know, our retail or especially food and dining establishments, because there's enough people here to pick up a lunch, you know, in there. So, and it'll be reflective as we go through.
But how much is based on 2019? Right?
Correct.
So the world is different today.
Yeah.
So you've got to assume at least 60 to 70% of that number is what it probably is. Because there's
Yeah, I'm sure there's some.
and much on a daily basis. For them, right?
Correct. But that outflow may be the same, that you got more people working from home here and staying at the same time. So I don't think it would match up in there. But we had, like, in our, and Don can speak this probably a little bit better, on last year's business license for Enterprise, they went from 850 to about 1,200. But you go out and look at that parking lot, and I mean, you can count how many cars are in there with, you know.
So they count all 1,200 employees as working in Olivet, but they're probably at home.
That during the pandemic, that's probably what was going on, but they were
They still claim.
sectioned on in that. So now the parking lot is a little bit busier now in there, but I'm sure we saw that going on. Don, do you have anything?
Yeah, they did report significantly more from one year to the next for 2021 to 2022, and this year they held steady. As far as the you know, the number of cars in the parking lot, there's not it doesn't seem that there are physically that many people there. However, I mean, maybe they need to have that capacity at any given time. And you know, all of those people, if they had to come in from the office, they would still report to that office, all of that office when they come in. So I can see why they would argue to keep it at that level, even if people were working from home, is what I'm saying. But as far as additional insight, no.
But you can use the food truck theory. 2018, I'd have at least 3 food trucks out there during lunchtime, and I'm sure there was more hidden in there. Now you go out there, you can't find any.
You still don't know.
Yeah.
Sure, you can call an ice cream truck.
Sure you could, but I'm not pandering to that.
All right. Then they looked at spending potential index. It's kind of it's just data and they put it together. Where an index over 100 indicates that there's potential growth because there's a lot of buying power within a segment, and anything under 100 indicates that people aren't not spending as much in terms of the average. And when they looked at that, I forgot what it was called, spending potential index, they did a 5, 10, and 15-minute circumference from Olivet and looked at each one of those. So you can see here in household furnishings, you know, when you look at a 15-minute circumference from Dealman and Olive, the spending index is just 96, so it's below the average in there. So there's not a big attraction or opportunity there. When you look at it within just a 10-minute circumference or diameter from Olivet, it is over that. There's quite a bit of buying power of 108. When you look at it within 5 minutes, it's 118. So it go ahead.
Question, when you talk about spending, basically you're talking about households and the categories that they tend to spend things.
That is correct. Mhm.
So according to what this says, within 5 minutes of Olivet, I don't know what 118 of what is.
Or there's an opportunity for more growth within those components. So let's say take a look at food in there. That, you know, there's still a lot of market room to attract other businesses.
If it's under 100, there's market room.
That
Is that right?
if it's under, it's saturated.
Oh, got it. Okay, I had it backwards.
Yeah,
Got it.
mhm.
Okay.
So they looked at, you know, these were the ones that showed potential growth: household furnishings and equipment, food, which is more like dining experiences, entertainment and recreation, and apparel and services.
So this basically tells us in most of those areas, if not all, people living here are going elsewhere to fill their needs.
Correct.
So being a point of sale taxing district, we're losing out.
There are. Mhm. Correct. There's an opportunity to
Ice cream for us. Hey, good ice cream.
Yeah, you do. I thought this was important.
So when you look at so then they looked at it by individual community: Olivet, Creve Coeur, Ladue, U City, and Overland, and they applied the same standard there. And you can see within those 4 segments, you know, Olivet, you know, there's a lot of buying potential within Olivet in these core areas. Now they're not showing like every type of trade. I would assume the other trades they just didn't have. You know, there was not as significant, you know, as these 4 here. And, you know, as we had our surveys and the community engagement, a lot of things we heard is that, you know, more retail opportunities along the corridor, more dining experience along the corridor. And we'll get into that in just a second too. You know, it's things we continuously heard. All right, so now I'm going to jump into the results of the engagement process, which was a community engagement forum they had here back in June, and then all the surveys that were done in there. So at the workshop, we had over 120 attendees that were here at the community center, and over 76 surveys that were completed during that workshop. In the surveys that were done online, we had over 351 surveys that were completed, and then at least 25, participated in each activity. And then we had all these other engagements, the workshop on the 18th, some pop-ups with the Indian Meadows Homeowners Association, and Olivet Night Out. So we distributed information, surveys, and things at those events, and then they calculated those. So those surveys that were probably distributed here are probably within that 351 number that was collected. So what did they say? The ones that they focused was the residents' impression of Olivet, housing, Olive Boulevard, walkability, diversity, environment, and then additional topics for the city. And I'll go through those. But for the most case, people saw Olivet as a great place to raise children. And of course, that's reflected in that cohort you saw in that growth.
It's on the right to the left.
These guys here. Let me, there we go. Is that all right? All right. In addition to that, it was a great place to live and a great place to retire and a great place to own a business. But when you're looking for dining and shopping, I mean, dining was overall, it was only 8 percentage points below 50. But a place to shop, it was way down. Just 19% of the residents showed that they were satisfied with the shopping experiences.
What did they want to buy?
Apparel. So, and we'll get to that later. All right. Then they asked, in the survey, what do you see yourselves continuing to live in Olivet in the next 5 years? 87% of the survey respondents that out of the 351 said yes. And that was, and again, if you look at those, that cohort of 5 to 19-year-olds, I mean, you're going to anticipate majority are going to wait for them to finish school in the district. So housing, they asked them the question in housing in there. 95% of the respondents were homeowners, but they'd like to see more housing that attracts moderate income owners. And the examples that they were given when they filled that out were like teachers, police, fire professionals, and there's the least preferred group to attract were first-time home buyers and young adults. Again, that's just on the results. In between were high-income earners and those who want to age in place. Housing affordability ranked second among Olivet's greatest challenges. That was behind dining, shopping, and retail. And then during conversations, housing affordability tied to single-family detached housing types was mentioned by a wide range of diverse voices. So again, they prefer to see more affordable housing, detached housing, than looking for density type of housing. They asked them about Olive Boulevard. And this was one of these good pat on the back type of things. 77% of the respondents said things are going, things are happening, and they're happening in a good way. And that's a lot of credit to the council and all the commissions, including the Economic Development Commission, for a lot of the overview of the different redevelopment projects that we've gone through. But people were seeing that the change and all that. They asked them about the quality of spaces, and they overall the people were satisfied with the outdoor and green spaces throughout the community. They were satisfied with the quality of development. There was support. Again, now here it switches, but it's just minor, supportive of the apartments that are being developed. But then when they look at opportunities for safe walking, the mix of retail services and availability anchor stores, the response was weak or dissatisfied in there. And that was somewhat interesting, because again, when you look at this one here, the availability of anchor stores, that is a policy decision that's derived from the original the current comprehensive plan, that we're not looking for a big box. We just don't have the space for a big box, and correct.
That's a whole different.
So
I think the city made it very clear about 25 years ago that that's not what we want to do.
correct. And regarding walkability, walkability was one of the most common themes that was heard in there. They wanted increased opportunities, and then this was interesting. They would prefer multi-trail connections between neighborhoods and parks as opposed to trying to connect to Olive, a neighborhood to Olive Boulevard. Top concerns for the environment. This is just looking at environmental issues. The top concerns for environmental issues was to preserve natural areas and habitats, stormwater, sustainability management, protection of water quality, protection of air, mitigate impacts because of weather events, reduce greenhouse emissions, improve solid waste management, and then just in general other. Now, some of those, I think they broke up some of those groups too much in there, or they do all fall under the same umbrella. But we'll be taking a closer look at that, as that will be one of the new principles being brought into the comprehensive plan. Diversity, diversity was the most common theme in open-ended survey responses in there. 57% of the residents said responses said it's very important and 25 to somewhat important. And when you look at it, it's like, well, what do you mean by diversity? Well, 72% is when it gets to race and ethnicity, 46 regarding income, 38% nationality, and 21% age, and then it just kind of drops into single digits from that point on. And then the consistent theme was we want more restaurants. That's the greatest challenge in there, and not just any type of restaurants. The desired restaurants are to have, traditional mom and pop and smaller chains, Asian, Mexican, African, coffee, bakery, fine dining. The least desired are the buffets and drive-throughs. Ideal mix, 81% smaller, locally owned. Preferred, 19% preferred larger chain. And then apartments, because it was commented during the Coffee with the Mayor, which we had back in January or February, in there that there was some comments, expressed because the construction was going on at that time. And then, but the 51 or 21 surveys, 11 said no more apartments. And it kind of leaves it, there needs to be more engagement or discussion. One of the things that I haven't gotten in terms of a feel and talked about it in the advisory committee is like, is it the apartments or is it the density? If the Oliver were condominium units, would that make that okay? Or is it no, it's the 5 stories of on a real small lot? Is the concern more density, as whether it's rented or owned, or is it really the apartments? And we'll see.
Assuming, taking for granted that there's plenty of parking for the residents of any of the apartment complexes that are being built, okay? Taking that out of the consideration. If they're pretty and they meet our standards and they're well landscaped and well cared for by the management of those said apartments, why do people care?
It's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean,
I
well, we
don't
hear,
think that's a stupid
no.
question either.
I think what we hear right away is its impact on schools, but we've had the discussion with the schools about apartments and density and all that. And they have their own long range plan with population growth
Right.
in there. So they're aware of what we've done, where it's going. So that is, it's easy to say, so that's not a factor. 2 is just, yes, they have parking, but they all drive, and there's a lot of cars on Olive Boulevard. Well, it is a state highway, and yes, there's so many aprons and things that we need to find ways to better manage that movement of traffic, because it's going to continue to grow. Whether we do nothing at all, Creve and U City are going to do, are not within our control. So, we just have to better manage that traffic. Then it comes down to, the design. If the Oliver was only 3 stories high, would people find it more palatable? I don't know. I mean, I like the building. It followed the comprehensive plan in there, but I think people think what I heard and believe is that there are some people concerned about they're just too tall. Given our community and topography, that they would have preferred something more of a smaller height than that.
I think it's obvious that all those people are gonna take all those tables at those restaurants that don't exist. And line at the shopping cart.
And so, but that's the balance that they
It's
bring.
the diner. It's the Saturday morning wait at the diner
Yeah,
now.
well,
It's gonna be
and
too long.
that's what that balance brings, because that hopefully creates the attraction, and we'll talk about it some more later. And there got a lot of things saved up for you guys about what that density is now doing and what we're starting to see, in terms of interest. So
I think it was also southbound traffic. Has been the big thing.
Southbound traffic on Friday.
Not, yep, southbound.
From where to where?
Actually,
Yeah,
From where to where? Where
from the new apartments.
Oh,
south.
behind,
Yeah,
towards Olive,
yeah,
like from
Olive.
north of Olive to Olive.
no, from the new Yowers property.
Oh, those
So,
apartments that are being built.
Those people leaving that, instead of being on Olive, go southbound.
On Price.
Price. Jamming a ton of extra traffic into Olivet. As opposed to onto Olive.
So that's an anticipated
That's an
issue,
anticipated issue
got it,
that those people are pushing.
got it.
So, may or may not.
Well, it behooves us. I mean, we have counts in place, knowing like how many cars are going through the stop signs at Bottom and Price. You know,
I know, we did the traffic study.
Yeah.
I'm fully supportive. I'm just saying that was.
but
that
for
was
five,
one of the
whoever's
big
here 5 years
complaints.
from now to
Yeah.
do a, you know, a comparison to see how that, you know, how significant that change was.
Yeah.
And then in terms of where did these surveys come from, you know, of the people that provided the information? I mean, I think given of how hard it is to get people to submit stuff and we did pretty good. I think it was pretty well spread out. Of course, the majority respondents were south of Olive. But we put a lot of focus trying to get, you know, interest from a diversity as possible. You know, we were low for Black, Asian renters and all that, but those numbers, when you look at the percentages of the population, they weren't that bad, and they're better than what you typically see on there. And so they are going to do some additional reach outs to some of these groups and business owners on August, and then also have some what they call stakeholder interviews and kind of roundtable discussions with selected groups as they move on. So,
Actually, with that participation, have you got any feel for how the participation is this time versus when we did it last time 20 years ago?
oh, I think we've far exceeded what we did back in, and that's why we hired this consultant specifically in there, because we had 3 charrettes where I think it was Logos, Old Bonham, and maybe at the community center in there, and they were back to back to back, and pretty much who you saw in the first one, you saw in the second and the third. In there, they were well attended, about 60 people in there for that time. But given that, you know, the internet was not as new and all the other outreach efforts, we had the survey we had, I think I had a little bit over 100, and this one we were over 351. We far exceeded what Aliceville had in their surveys, you know, where they were at this point, because they used a similar consultant in there. And then in terms of the stakeholder groups, they're pretty much reflective of what we had, you know, back in, you know, 2004, of like, you know, how do we get more people from Indian Metals and Hilltop to participate in these processes. So does that answer what you, I mean, stirred around.
Actually, makes sense. I thought there was, I remember being at those meetings.
All 3?
Well, one, that was the focus meeting, but, didn't
One thing,
remember any other forms of participation. So,
We did a booth at Summerfest and handed out some surveys, and then that was about it. Beyond that, Councilman Carl, were you gonna say something?
I was just gonna note that it looks like you've got a fairly even density. So if you assume a roughly equal population, then you got a pretty good fair sample.
Yes, I was happy. I mean, we can always do better, but I was happy with what they did. All right, Becky doesn't want to see you guys, so I got to close it up.
Oh, I'm gonna see it myself. I also wanna see it. Yeah,
All right. Oh, I should just move it on this side.
definitely. Yeah, that-
All right. All right, so, and then they did take a step forward to see, okay, well, what does all this information mean in there? One is, you know, population is going to be is stagnant, but all of it is pretty healthy and has has laid the foundations to continue a good steady population growth. And again, not overshooting anything in any forms, but just keeping a consistent growth of about 5 to 10%. In terms of retail, that they're to look at, activating the backs of commercial buildings is an option they're talking about. So that means like behind, let's say if Walgreens was something more than just a pharmacy, that they're in the back, there could be a little coffee shop or something that's a little bit more discreet, as opposed to having to, be solely facing Olive. So that there would be more activity off of the side and for residents to kind of walk to it and as opposed to having to get to Olive. And then Olive Boulevard, a more coordinated effort of making improvements under the current 2004-2006 comprehensive plan. It's all based that under new developments, we get the new streetscape. So you got all these gaps in there, and maybe the city should take a more proactive approach and look at it. Yeah, and do it in a broader, instead of waiting one by one. Looking at opportunities to create pop-ups, and that was like if, a food truck show up at, a coordinated effort to have food trucks at Stacy Park, on certain days.
Food truck Fridays. what it is.
Yeah, or a farmer's market, or even to do, putting a coffee kiosk, Monday through Friday mornings at Stacy Park. And I'm just using that as an example, or having, during at Warson Park during athletic events that, that we have something a little bit more there that provides an opportunity for somebody to buy stuff.
So, not just go off on a tangent, but while Warson Park is being renovated and redeveloped and built and all those things, is there a concession setup being built up there?
No,
There was one in the old,
Oh,
the old community center. It was, wasn't really up to standards. And it wasn't widely used.
not the roller rink. You're talking about the community.
The community center was a kitchen.
Yeah, well, in the new, there is a kitchen in the new community center
Oh,
for events
right,
and
right.
teaching purposes and all that, yeah.
all
Mhm.
that, But
But not like they won't make.
did they give, sorry, I haven't been around much.
You're
I've been
fine.
working. Sorry. Is there, when they rebuilt everything at Stacy, did that whole concession area in the shelter go away?
Yes, it's my understanding that because you got the 2 bathrooms in the same location, and then the front is now storage of equipment, and then you have the new shelter building pavilion off
It
there.
didn't go away. For the bathroom.
Right,
Yes.
but the concession
more.
area is gone.
I'm gonna go off on a tangent. How hard is it to get a farmer's market going? Is that tough?
It is hard.
It is?
Yeah, it's a lot more work than you would think. I know a ton of market managers
Yeah.
and it is hard work. It's not impossible. It can
To
be
get
done,
people to show up or to get vendors to show up?
both.
Huh.
You need a lot of time to get the word out. that
Huh.
There's a farmer's market in Olivet on a certain day, and you have to be there every week, and you have to have viable vendors that people want to buy stuff from.
Yeah.
So,
Live music. Okay. I'll take
well,
that.
yeah, but live music is
Yeah.
not a requirement, but it's nice.
Yeah. live
It's
music.
nice. Well, I know somebody who would do it for you every week. But still,
We only do it once a month and all that. It's just once a month, first Sunday of every month.
that's not a
Stunning.
farmer's market. That would not
2024.
build momentum.
Every
once a
other
month.
week.
No, it would have to be every
All right,
week,
we'll take this off.
because I buy my produce once a week, right?
I buy mine frozen.
Well,
It's
then you're not a
delivered.
farmer's market guy, are you?
All right.
Then the last thing they were looking at was again, figuring out ways to get existing property owners to reinvest in their older buildings. And that's a battle we've been having for a long time, so. Land use, again, being creative with single family housing, opportunities for more younger families with lower incomes, age in place. walkability, higher density, mixed use, diversity and affordability.
Well, I mean,
Mhm.
we saw the population growth, of children 5 to 19, so was there really a problem with younger families, with lower income bringing children? I mean, do we think that's really an issue, or is that a perception problem?
I think it's more a perception as they were answering, you know, what are opportunities, and one is to attract more younger families. So. All right, so that runs, that kind of summarizes that aspect of the comprehensive plan and addresses yes. So Don now is going to talk about the business communications and then pretty much our licensing data and what's come in for this year. Don, you want to take the role because I got your older slides.
Yes, sir. Let me get to it. Sorry, it is, where-
You should be.
yeah, I'm having a moment here. I don't know why.
I can show the older ones.
No, it's okay. And I'm so sorry. I guess I must have just closed it like a second ago.
Mhm.
And it's taking forever to reopen. So, but I will share my screen. This. There we go. We got it now. Let me know when you can see it.
It's okay. There you go.
All right, so year to date, and I would like to stress the year to date, I still get business license applications every once in a while. Our official date that we require people to have their paperwork in by is May 15th, which is the date of expiration on all business licenses throughout the city every year. So to date, 224 total registered businesses, but that is a nice employee number, 4,184. And it's fairly evenly split amongst the different commercial quadrants, which is nice because it shows that we're not all heavily, we're not too heavily leveraged in any one place. However, I mean, that is only in numbers of businesses. Our number of employees for commercial quadrants kind of shows, Olivet East or Olive East as our clear winner there. Then we have we divide our business licenses into 3 major categories and business license application types, which are manufacturer, merchant, and service. There are obviously our in service that includes all of our restaurants and things that fall under all businesses, which would include any type of IT or business services, real estate, etc. If they do business, or if they do direct sales, they fall under merchants. Restaurants specifically, however, can fall under services and merchants. And manufacturers, for the number of manufacturing companies that we still have a pretty good number of employees in manufacturing for our city. Then I did a little breakdown of the major NACE code or major NACE sectors. And oops, those numbers are supposed to be in there. And a map. I don't have it memorized for the number of businesses per type, but I can get you guys that information. We are leading with professional, scientific, and technical services, followed by healthcare. Healthcare, we're pretty strong because we have a lot of home healthcare service companies. Retail, I can't think of anything specifically in retail, although in our number the number of employees, our highest employers are Enterprise Fleet Management, Murphy Company, Honeywell or Intelligrated, Classic Air Care, Payne-Crest Electric, Crown Lift Trucks, and Paralis White, or also known as Bazan Painting, and Lincare Midwest. The Gund Company appears on the list twice because they are merchant and service, but they still have a combined count of 67. And then I thought Chevy's and Fallon's have the same number of employees, and they're right there at the top there. So competitors, maybe across the street. And that's about it.
All right. Now we now do have the data that we can go back and compare it to when we started the 5-year plan, you know, the 2017 data, which is pre-pandemic. And then we can look at last year's data and then this data and see, you know, what the trajectories are on that. We do know we are going to have some impacts. Enterprise Fleet Management, which is you know, employs over 1,200 people. That building is up for sale. And there's either they're consolidating offices or so.
You think they're gonna leave?
Yes.
Oh.
It's already a done deal.
Already know that.
Yes,
Okay.
we're just trying to find out when. In there, and then next door to them is Virginia Tile, which is one of our high sales tax generators. That building, their space is up for lease. They're also leaving in there. So more of this is probably because of consolidation, as opposed to anything specifically regarding all of that, you know, in there. So,
Car dealership.
well, in terms of new businesses coming in, so we did have a consignment dealership that's opening up on Bauer. And basically, like if you have, you know, a car that meets their standards, they will sell it for you. And then
Car lot.
it's not a car lot, it's a consignment of some sort. But eventually your car goes into their facility to get prepped for the sale. And they do high-end cars, so it's in there. Their current location is in Creve Coeur, right across the street from the Warson Park in there, but they're relocating the Bauer. Seems like a pretty unique business in there, so it'll be kind of interesting.
It's always fun to drive by there and see the cars.
You've seen them, yeah. And so, and some other things just to kind of bring you to speed. So, we have the wine merchant. The council's approved all the permitting and licensing that's necessary. Hopefully by the end of August, I think is their anticipated opening, if not earlier. So that was a big win.
Did the bank take the bolt out of it?
I don't know. I wonder what they have. The drive-through canopy is going to stay.
It's fun.
It's going to stay. Yes.
Prepared, so side.
So, and it gives them some flexibility if there's ever a change in the future, but hopefully they'll have this as a long-term tenant. We did get the permit for that Parisian cafe, which is comparable to a bread company for the shops for Olive Crossing in there. So they're working on the first 5 tenant structure. We do know one of the you know, on the western side, they'll have the Parisian baguette. On the eastern side, we're still waiting for him to announce who he has as a restaurant in there. The first 9 occupants should be moving in at the end of this week into the Olive Crossing, the Clover is what it's called, the apartment complex at Olive Crossing.
It's done.
For 9 people, for 9 occupants, yes. 9 units will be opening, will be set and ready. Their goal is by this Friday.
I didn't know we would approve it on parts of the building like that.
No, it's because all the corridors and all that. So now they're just working within the units.
Okay, I'm not complaining, I'm just saying, I'm surprised.
So
Hey, Carlos, I know city council has gone and toured the facility. earlier in its state of construction. Would that be of interest to anybody here?
Field trip?
A field trip
And I
The
can,
apartment
to the
complex?
apartments and, you
Then
know,
the
kind of
development itself.
walk the lot, see
Sure.
see what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, have Greg take us around.
I can make that request.
Yeah.
I think that.
I think it'd be
He's
good.
a great tour guide.
What's that?
He said Greg's a great tour guide.
I'm sure.
So the Oliver, when it came online, was basically almost sold out, right?
Yes, they had, they far exceeded their occupancy. And last I talked to them, this was about 3 months ago, there was like 4 units left.
Do you have any indication yet it's older? Other than they're sold out?
No, just 9 are being leased, and we're set and ready. And then the rest will come in line by the end of August.
You don't send.
No. He's kind of indicated, but I'd be lying if I remember the numbers. I heard 50 being thrown around.
How
So
many units?
the structure itself has 154 units. No, 184 units. Take that back, 184. 154 is the Oliver. I guess confused. Right. That being said, too, so the Plant Haven Commercial Center, 9514 Olive, in there. We received a petition to put a brew pub and restaurant, and that got their commission approval last week, and now it goes to council on August on the 8th and the 22nd
What
for
was the
their
first thing you said? A
uh,
what? It was-
a brew pub.
Oh.
So it's a microbrewery type of thing, more, for in-house use. So they'll be taking 3 tenant spaces in there. Nice plans, nice facility. Everything's online on that. If you get a chance to take a look at it, it's exciting. And
I think it's hilarious that Jeff Springer's vision finally came to life after he moved, but we
Well, you
finally
kinda
have a
wonder,
brew
it's like,
pub
why weren't
and
they
he
doing it
doesn't
before?
live here anymore. It's
Yeah.
great.
You know,
We have to invite him back for a beer.
Yeah, I know. I was in a meeting with him like earlier this week or last week. He can't leave.
So, all right, there's also, there's been, the Olive Crossing. There at I-170 and Olive. They have an ordinance that establishes a special zoning district, what we call Plan Development District, the PDD. For them, that kind of governs the uses that are in there. And then there's also a map that reflects how the different lots within that development would be used. And there's 1, 2, 3. I think there's 6 lots in there. Lots 1 and 2, you start at Price and you have lots 1, at Price and Olive. There's 1 in the middle, that's 2. Lot 3 is closest to the ramp, and that's where the Parisian Baguette supposed to be going. Lot 4 is the apartment complex. Lot 5 is going to be the office building and the garage structure, and then lot 6 is the hotel in there. So probably about a year ago, he came in and indicated that he had an opportunity that combines lots 1 and 2. So he got approval to have either a lot 1 and 2, because lot 1 had designated drive-through. Whatever went there was probably going to have a drive-through, and then there would be a smaller retail building on lot 2. And I'm sorry I don't have the map in there making it. Or he'd combine lot 1 and 2 and kind of have a I'm just going to say right now like a box structure. So it'd be a single tenant in there, and typically the goal is that grocer. It was to reflect that if that opportunity persisted. So he petitioned the council to change the developers agreement to broaden the identification of grocers that were listed. And there are certain grocers that are prohibited in there, and the council did authorize that. Greg, I'll let you talk about it if you don't mind, in terms of who the specifics are. But there is an opportunity that he will have a grocer take up lots 1 and 2 at the corner at Price and Olive.
I would, except I'm not sure how public it is yet. Did we voted on it? Didn't we already?
Yes, it's
Okay,
tomorrow's the
then-
second reading.
All right, so, but I don't know if the actual grocers. Was it identified in there? I just,
Well,
I don't want to,
But it's what the ordinance amends in terms of what's prohibited. So one of the grocers was, it's
That's prohibited or that's-
correct. that was prohibited was to have a discount grocer, and then it identified certain grocers. They've, it's gone through a first reading that, you know, what was identified as discount grocers, they took out one, and that was Aldi. You know, so now that is a permitted grocer,
Oh, it is a permitted. growth.
correct? And now, there hasn't been any application submitted, but this,
This is why I was kind of, wasn't sure quite where we were with this, so.
Yeah. well, but then there's no application, but that change has taken place, so it provides that opportunity. So, you know, if we receive any petition, of course, we'll post it online, you know. On there. Very good question. I'll talk about that next. Unfortunately, yeah,
Is there ever pulling out of that?
I don't know specifically, but I know that the assemblage of the residential properties in the back, it seems to be like it did not happen in there, so. I know it had went through all the, yes, there was still on the other side of the creek.
Which is.
It's not Mayfair, but I can't, maybe it is, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So you said he had,
Study, we talk about wanting to have diversity in our community, especially of income. And we want to attract younger individuals to the community, but yet we're against the discount grocery. That just seems
Yeah.
I don't know, counterintuitive.
well, and maybe that now the change gives that opportunity, that changes that opportunity, so.
Well, I tell you what, you know, just like, first of all, I'm on the city committee, so I've been to these meetings and stuff like this. And I have to say this, the good people, I think they were well picked. I mean, you've got, I'm representing the EDC. You've got, PCDC, Parks Commission, and then you've got people from various subdivisions. I tell you what, looking at some of this data, because I've seen it before, there's a lot of ambiguity and contradiction in it, because and this is sort of stuff that needs to be weeded out. But yeah, it's kind of like you're talking about. Yeah, we don't like in one of the things on the study, it was presented tonight. I don't know if you saw it. We don't want young families. That was one of the least desirable
Young
things.
adults.
Young adults.
Young adults and
Or,
first time.
or first time home buyers. Yeah, we don't want that.
Yes.
But it's kind of like, how can you really go ahead and, you know, as a city, can you go ahead and say, well, you know, we're putting up a sign here, everybody welcome, except, just not gonna cut it. However, you can fashion your development that certain demographics would be attracted or not attracted, that sort of thing. And that's kind of a subtext, which I don't even know if that is really something which is really allowed in terms of, you know, city planning. But there are a lot of ambiguities and there are a lot of cross purposes and things in this. So it really has to be sort of weeded out. And, you know, there's a lot of people who are, you know, gung ho about the parks. There's some people who are gung ho about Olive, got people who are totally against apartments, and other people who are like, in order, if we want a walkability, more walkable area, we need to have more density, because the two things work hand in hand. And it's a kind of a learning experience for some of the people there. And I think the consultants are kind of molding what it comes out of the community into a rational, doable plan. And I think that's kind of how it's gonna shake out in the future. But that's, you know.
I'm just surprised to hear, you know, the spending power index of this community is extremely high. And the first grocer that we get is like a discount grocer, like those things don't match. So I'm just surprised to hear, like, we've been waiting how many years for this project? Like, they finished, they're almost done across the street, and we broke ground before they did. And we're gonna end up with an Aldi is really surprising. And I don't think I'm gonna be alone in like the surprise from the community if that's what goes in is like the anchor box store.
We have all of the big expensive grocery stores surrounding us, right? So how would we attract a more upscale grocer?
Which
Like-
We don't have any expensive grocery stores.
Schnucks, Deerbergs.
Those are the.
Within the
Straub's.
immediate
I mean,
vicinity.
Strauss,
With
but
immediate
that's-
vicinity.
Actually, I've heard-
That's not in our
Myers
community,
Trying to
but
get,
that's-
break into the
Fresh
area
Time?
here.
That's
Meyer.
Fresh Time.
Yeah, okay.
MEIJER, Meyer, that,
Yeah.
those guys, that's Fresh Time.
It is, because
Okay.
actually I heard something in the Business Journal where they're putting their first store in Collinsville or someplace out
Yeah,
that
I think
area.
they were doing two.
Yeah.
Two in that, in the east side.
Yeah. But when you have a grocery store moving into the area, it helps to open multiple
and I think-
things from
Yeah.
a standpoint,
When you
it's
look at,
fresh produce.
when we started the process and, that was one of the hopes. One is it can't be a Deerbergs or a Schnucks. I mean, we started off we started off the development with that, and that's about 80,000 square feet. And that, pretty much all that you were gonna get. And again, that wasn't what the community vision was. Now, U-City's doing it, and I'll note in the comment you had noted, yeah, it's a lot faster to build a box than it is to build something a little bit more complex with height and all that. And that's where the differences are taking. And I hope, in the end, I think we'll have a better product in there, but we'll have all those nice amenities right next door in there. But that's, that concrete wall and the gas station and all that, it wasn't what was within our vision in there. So when he approached us, then, with the mixed development, the multiple heights, then it was to look for an 18,000 square foot grocer. And there was a lot in 2018 to pick from. And there, two of them are gone, and the others just aren't doing anything, So there was the Fresh Time, there was at least
Lucky's.
Lucky's,
Lucky's
and there
gone.
was somebody else, the pickings were great, but 5 years later,
Yeah, Fresh Market, their building is still for lease and,
Fresh Time.
but it had to be within
Fresh
that
Market.
range, that 18,000 square
Fresh
feet.
Market was-
Not to say that there aren't other opportunities, or Schnucks has created, like the Cullen area, that there are other, options within those, but, we just didn't have the space for like the full Schnucks or the full Deerbergs in there, and then to do all the parking. And but-
that being said too, I mean, now that the storage facility has gone up, I've heard just complaints about it saying, what is this happening here? Why couldn't we get something better? And it's kind of like, we had it out there for a number of years. I mean, it's been, I don't know how many years since the Hardys got torn down. And then the bank had it and they dragged their feet. And then, all of a sudden a decade goes by. You kind of have to take what you can take. Take what comes to you. You can zone and, beat the bushes for stuff. And I think, I don't know if I'm defending Greg or not, or
Sounds like
or the developer. I mean, you kind of get what you get. I mean, all this stuff builds on each other, and that's kind of been the strategy of development along Olive for the last 20 years, really. 20 years ago, developers wouldn't touch us with a 10-foot pole. They did not think that we were amenable to any development, let alone high development. So, and I think over time we've proven that, and I think, it's still work in progress.
So I'll conclude with my last slide here, because then maybe that kind of answers everybody's question. So this is, I've imposed both developments, because back in 2010, we started a joint project with University City to see how we can coordinate planning around this intersection. And it went to about 2012 in that process before there was differences between the two councils. So we didn't go any further. Each side went on their own. We went out for our RFP, they went out for theirs. This was the last design back in January. The U-City Council had approved the Deerbergs development here. And you can see where the creek kind of passes by. So I believe it was called Mayfield, or it was like, there was a subdivision back here in there. They had also this box here that didn't have a name, but looked like a Target in there. And then there's the Chick-fil-A, there's the Canes. the Chipotle, First Watch, the hairdresser, Chase Bank and all that in there. And again, those drive ups, great for our residents, you know, real close by, but for us to give up that much parking, you know, when we have a smaller corridor, you know, just it wasn't reflective of our comprehensive plan. And we did a little bit of that here on Greg's property in there, but we, you know, he was gonna have a drive-through, but what he's gonna do is combine these two lots and then build. The intent would be to have a grocery here and parking here. Now, he's petitioning the council to have that flexibility to do. It has not been submitted in any way yet. But that kind of gives you an idea between the two developments. Again, the Deerberg was gonna be back here.
And why is it not happening?
I couldn't tell you. I heard that, and based on the U City Council minutes, one of the residents here kind of indicated that there was a disagreement in the purchases and was asking the city, for them to start relinquishing the properties that were bought out and putting them back into the market.
It's poor word.
But I thought that'd be great, to have a Deerberg's, it's, right next door. They can use all the space over here, but it would be very, just like the Costco. It's a great addition to all of that, but it's on their side, and that's okay.
I think everyone is on the council and whatnot is operating under the. So, I personally don't necessarily hear a lot of these things. And secondly, I don't go to the grocery store very often. So my opinion of grocery stores is moot here. Is that people still wanted a grocery store in the city. And I think that's what everyone's responding to. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Is why we gave him the option. And because it seems like it may be the only possibility for such a thing, so.
See what it'll be, right?
Yeah.
All right. And I think those are all the updates I have. If there's any questions on the dispensary.
Yeah, that's what, there you go. You read my mind. I turned on my mic.
Uh, The motion failed at the council, at the council meeting. It failed, I think it was 1-4.
Wait,
Yes,
the
yes.
dispensary conversation?
No, well, we had the gentleman here back in January as he was going to the, yeah, no, the retail. And so, but ultimately it did not get approved by the council.
You're supposed to go on the corner of Dolores and Olive if you're not familiar. And there's just not enough room on that lot for the circulation they needed for the amount of customers they expected.
I thought part of the state law said that the municipalities could not pass an ordinance rejecting
We
dispensary.
didn't, it wasn't
Yes.
an ordinance, it was specific to this location was not appropriate
Got it, okay.
for.
Just like if we said Taco Bell couldn't go there because it would cause too much traffic.
What about the retail development in front of the Oliver?
That one, we're still, and the other big news, I'm sorry, we will have a new city manager starting August 7th.
I was wondering about that.
Her name is Jennifer Yackley. She's the city administrator for Rockville.
Jennifer who?
Yackley. Is that correct, Greg?
Yes,
Yes.
Why-
The
why
council
SCK? Why?
announced.
I think you know her better than I do, Carlos, so.
Yes. I think the council made that selection like about mid-June.
But then,
So she'll be starting with the city of Olivet August 7th.
Good for her.
That will be one of the things we'll go back and discuss. And there, I reached out to the Sansone group and, that, especially with across the street and what's going on, the opportunities there now.
Just getting back to the dispensary, you kind of glossed over that. With
Went up the
regards.
pace.
in fact, it's on Carlos's picture there.
Well,
Excellent,
well done.
excellent.
Well done. You're always so straight. I mean,
I know, that was awesome.
just with regards to, I was not at the meeting, but I listened to it afterwards, the recording online. And of course, there was, the residents were dead set against it, and they made a very valiant effort to go ahead and talk against it. However, first of all, they did the dispensary people came here and they did a presentation. And I thought it was a positive presentation. And I think we gave it a positive review, although we weren't in a position to go ahead and recommend anything. I don't know if that was imparted to the council at all, in a positive light. And secondly, I think that, the kinds of arguments against it were traffic, property values, crime, traffic and things like that. And I just think that a lot of those things could be applied to whatever business goes in there. And I think that I see that as a little bit of a problem. I mean, if you're going to go ahead and say you don't want a dispensary there, say you don't want a dispensary.
Well, that isn't what we were saying, though. We were saying, I can tell you what I was saying. I looked at the traffic study, and we had a traffic study. And their rate of customer turnover, people going through that parking lot, there was barely enough room for parking in a single drive lane. You'd have to have circulation the one way. And then the question was, we wanted to close at least one entrance on Dolores or Olive, right? But you couldn't really, if you put it on Dolores, you're actually having people in the way for the people coming in and out of Dolores. If you put it on Olive, that goes against breaking the number of whatever.
Greg, that being said,
Yeah.
they went, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong. The applicant went to PCDC. PCDC said, make these changes, and they did. And I think they were short, they have like maybe a dozen parking spaces, something like that. Maybe they were short one based on the traffic flow, like what you're talking about. But ultimately, I believe they gave a positive recommendation saying that this could work. It meets our standards.
It does, but we are allowed to look at that and determine that it for other reasons beyond what they're considering. Right? I mean, we were taking into consideration, I had the old chief, sitting there going, I wrote so many parking tickets or speeding tickets at that spot. I mean, I just had a lot of stuff that said, this is not a good spot for this use. The lot is too small.
All I'm saying is that the type of things that were brought up could be applicable to any other business. And I think that you're basically hindering that location to some extent.
I believe that's true in the fact that, yes, a busy business can't go in there. I don't know that we wanted the headaches and the potential safety issues it might have caused if it went in there. I mean, it boiled down to traffic accidents and things like that for me on that street right there.
The speculation of traffic accidents.
Yes, but it was more than just speculation because we also had the traffic study. It isn't just people coming in and say there'll be more traffic. You've heard that many times, right?
And I think, the commission did, and again, as a planner professionally, the space met all the minimums, and again, those are minimums, in there. And, however, the way it's called out as a special permit, both the commission, but more specifically, the council has the ability to think about it broader and the impact that it has. The process worked well. Personally, yeah, it was too big of a shoe to fit in that box. But it met all the minimums, and that's my role is to inform the commission and everyone that, we're like, it met all the minimums, but it was such a new business. There was so many unknowns. and all that, but because it was called out by its own independent chapter and all that. I think the council did the right thing in the end. I'd like to see the business.
Me too, but, again, I have nothing against them. Nothing against the company personally. Just didn't think this was gonna
But-
work.
Oh, they mow.
But the other thing too is like, again, so what happens if it was just a retailer that came in, so what if Walgreens wanted to go in? Walgreens doesn't require a special permit unless they have a drive-through. So again, you can have something with the same type of volume and demand, but that's permitted by right, and again, it meets the code, but it may be too much for that site, but that's, the focus on that is off the table because it's code compliant. These guys were like really like on the border on all the specifics in there. And I think and the commission wasn't as happy, and they were gonna have them come back too. But they went ahead to keep the process moving, to send it to the council.
The PCDC.
Yes. Mhm.
And as much as I didn't like how long it took and those kinds of things, I think people going through the effort to get things set up, but you got to do that to know that it's really not going to work. Because they did the best they could to make it the PCDC did the best they could to make it palatable, given the fact that it met all the minimums, right? I think in that sense, they performed their job. They did their best job of protecting residents based on their role. And so, but I'm sorry that it took that long, both for the business and PCDC, but that's the process, so.
My point in raising this is that
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be very interested to see what happens with that property.
Yeah, well, and that
Right,
part of that
Yeah.
is a function. When Olive Crossing, when the Shops at Price Crossing was being developed, we had that discussion to go all the way to Dolores. You gotta go all the way to Dolores. And the developer at that time didn't want to take those properties.
And there were, there were newer houses there, which.
There was the first tear down that was built in there before all the other ones started coming in.
Yeah, I know it well. We sold it.
And then he went to the Board of Adjustment and asked to have no buffer up against the residential properties, because that Dolores was going to be phase 2. And it was granted that he didn't have to have this, this nice buffer up against the residential properties on Dolores. And then we ended up here, and that's just a bit, unfortunately, and I was here, but it was, not holding up good planning principles, and sticking, like, you got to get the whole thing.
Understand. I believe me, I understand. It's messy.
Mhm.
Not a perfect science, but just,
But it's one of those, I got these lots like the Amico station at Old Bonham and Olive. It's like, what can I do with those? It's like, and they're too expensive to tear down to put more parking for the office building.
well, that's all I got.
It was a tough one.
Yeah, that was not easy.
But that was it. Anything else? Sorry.
I guess I'm in charge, right? Yeah, I guess you're looking at me. I'm looking at you. Okay, other business, meeting minutes,
No meeting
meeting
minutes. Sorry
minutes.
about that. We'll get those.
in reports. We've heard a little bit from
Yep.
Greg already.
Do you mind?
Live Oaks and Morrison will be opening soon.
I hope.
Memberships are currently available. The Irvside Dog Park is open too now,
Right.
so all kinds of stuff happening.
And based on that, you don't need to buy a
Pass.
a pass for it for the end of the year, but you will have to buy a pass next year for your dog.
That is correct.
You can just run the dog up there now. How much does the dog pass?
That's my question.
It was like $10, wasn't it?
I want to say it's something like that, $5 or $10. I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
thought the dog
Plus-
park was
plus-
25, and to register your dog, it's $3 if they're spayed or neutered, and $10 if they're not.
So it's
And-
$25 to do the dog park?
pretty sure. I'm not entirely sure. So
Do we have any initial data on the Five Oaks applications? Like how many people are joining?
Not offhand. I know that they're open and they have some people that have. I had to check with Beverly.
All right.
I can ask and then send an email.
Just an FYI, packet pickup for the turkey trot will be at Five Oaks this year. So we're gonna
Cool.
be introducing the building to the entire community. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
And the
A
registration.
lot of other people too.
Registration opens up 8/1. Yeah, it's gonna be great.
Right. And last thing, so for our August meeting, if I talk to Mr. Yowitz, do you want to do our next regularly scheduled meeting in August at the crossing, or ask for a specific date and time?
Yeah, either way, whatever works with his, you know, it may be. Maybe a case of, hey, wait until this happens, or I gotta get this done before, you know, it'd be cool for people to see this or that.
But
Just work with them on it.
but a regular Monday afternoon evening is okay.
Yeah,
Should be.
Okay.
for me.
Oh, and then last thing, the chamber was going to hold a networking event at Stacy Park on Thursday. But because of the weather, we're changing the location. It will be at Fallon's. I'm just noting that, you know, the chamber's kind of sponsoring
Oh.
that,
was it so hot?
just networking, since you guys are EDC commission members. I think it's from 4:30 to 6.
That's not just open to chamber members, is it? Is it?
Well, he's asked me to ask, the city officials, so. You
Because
are
you're being
an official and a
We're all
member.
official.
Most.
We're officials.
Bring the gap.
You get one free drink, so. All right,
I call for adjournment.
With that, I think we've got motion and adjournment real quick.
thank you all.
So with that, we are closed.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night, Doug.
Okay. Farmers markets are not